stage and actually committed the deed? Wouldn't they want to wait and see who took the bait and arrest two crooked politicians? I think the puppet press, as usual, totally missed the big story. The very day before his arrest, Tuesday, on Monday, he called a press conference. It was aired on CNN, and I watched it. He announced that since the Bank of America, a recipient of untold millions, if not billions, of the bailout money, refused to help the Illinois-based company Allied Windows, he announced that the state of Illinois was suspending all business with the Bank of America for blatantly not using the money to help average American citizens as it was stated to be intended. The very next day, less than 24 hours after daring to go up against the corrupt gods of money and Wall Street and high finance, he was chopped down to size. What a message this sends to all other governors and officials. His bail was only $4,500, so his crime must have been insignificant, but he has been successfully neutralized for attempting to support the middle class and daring to criticize the lords of Wall Street for their intentional fleecing of we the people. And now to the bailout of the auto manufacturers, which did not pass this time, but will pass in some form or fashion sooner or later. Socialism in action. What a good laugh the countries around the world must have now after we have went around the world preaching free markets, democracy for decades, and now our system is in free fall due to the greed and the corruption of Wall Street, the Federal Reserve banking system, and our incompetent government. And as if this will make us all feel warm and fuzzy inside, the government said they would appoint a car czar to make sure the big three uses the money wisely. A government $11 trillion past bankrupt, the greatest debtor nation in the history of the world that is printing untold trillions of unbacked fiat paper money, is going to appoint someone to supervise the big three and dispense pearls of wisdom on how to use our money wisely. How ludicrous, how ridiculous. This would be like having Bill Clinton teach abstinence classes, or have Ted Kennedy in charge of Alcoholics Anonymous, or naming Rush Limbaugh czar of the nation's Oxycontins. When asked on Monday in hearings if this money would be enough or would they be back again, in a moment of refreshing honesty, they said they will need more money. When asked when, they replied perhaps June. Sadly, we cannot bail our way out of this mess, nor can we stimulate our way out of this debacle. Whether now or sometime in the future, the day of reckoning looms and will come to fruition. It is not a matter of if, only a matter of when. After the auto manufacturers, who is next? Perhaps the credit card companies? There is only three people in the government that comes to mind that are fit to supervise this or anything else for that matter. Ron Paul, Dennis Kucinich, and Virginia Fox. When we go to the phones, I would like to hear your comments on this and anyone else you might like to add to my list. People, we are entering a very sad time in American government. They have outsourced our jobs, spent us into bankruptcy, and the unwarranted wars of aggression, intentionally refused to secure our borders, meddled in the free market system to the point of collapse, dismantled our Constitution, and built and supported a welfare state here in America. Too many people are working to keep up those that refuse to work. Drastic changes is mandatory to even start to fix our economic woes. But we are already witness to the same old coming from the Obama camp. The middle class will continue to be the victim of a government hopelessly out of control that blatantly and openly now refuses to give a care to the will of the people. And I, for one, do not accept this corruption and destruction of our republic. Brian, how you doing today? What you got for us?
This is an article by Congressman Ron Paul, Gun Control, Protecting Terrorists and Despots. Tragically, over the Thanksgiving holiday, the world was reminded how evil and cruel people can be. According to emerging accounts of the events in India, about a dozen well-armed and devastatingly well-trained terrorists laid siege to the city of Mumbai, killing almost 200 people and terrorizing thousands. Regardless of the reasons, the indiscriminate shooting of masses of unarmed and defenseless people is a chilling and reprehensible. How were these terrorists able to continue for so long, relatively unchallenged, killing so many? India's gun laws are her business, of course. However, once the shock of these events and the initial reaction of fear passes, Americans should take away a valuable lesson about real homeland security and gun control from this tragedy. Gun control advocates tell us that removing guns from society makes us safer. If that were the case, why do the worst shootings happen in gun-free zones, like schools, for example? And while accidents do happen, aggressive, terroristic shootings like this are unheard of at gun and knife shows or military bases. It bears repeating that an armed society truly is a polite society. The fact is that firearms technology exists. It cannot be uninvented. As long as there is metalworking capability, it matters not what gun laws are imposed upon law-abiding people. Those that wish to have guns and disregard the law will have guns. Gun control makes violence safer and more effective for the aggressive, whether the aggressor is a terrorist or a government. History shows us that another tragedy of gun laws is genocide. Hitler, for example, knew well that in order to enact his final solution, disarmament was a necessary precursor. While it is not always the case that unarmed populace will be killed by their government, if a government is going to kill its own people, it must disarm them first so they cannot fight back. Disarmament must happen at a time when overall trust in government is high and under the guise of safety for the people or perhaps the children. Knowing that any government, no matter how idealistically started, can become despotic, the Founding Fathers enabled the future freedom of Americans by enacting the Second Amendment. In our own country, we should be ever vigilant against any attempts to disarm the people, especially in this economic downturn. I expect violent crime to rise sharply in the coming days, and as states and municipalities are even more financially strained, the police will be even less willing to respond to crime. In many areas, local police could become more and more absorbed with revenue-generating activities, like minor traffic violations, and the asset forfeiture opportunities of nonviolent drug offenses. Your safety has always ultimately been in your own responsibility, but never more so than now. People have a natural right to defend themselves. Governments that take that away from their people should be highly suspect. And earlier this week, Congressman Ron Paul was also on the floor of the House of Representatives speaking on the auto bailout. We're going to go ahead and play an audio clip of that now.
Thank you. At this time, I recognize the gentleman from Texas.
Without objection.
Thank you. At this time, I recognize the gentleman from Texas for 2 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am rising in opposition to this bill. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I am concerned that we're narrowed down on a problem of the car industry, which is a significant problem, but we're dealing with $15 billion here. But if you look at the grand problem we have, it's much, much bigger. And it seems like we don't pay much attention to it. The problems that we're facing today and the problems that we have been trying to solve in these last 6 months was a predictable problem. It had been building for a good many years. We can date it back to 1971, and we've had a financial bubble building, and so there were many who predicted that the climax would be exactly as we're witnessing. But we don't seem to want to go back and find out how do financial bubbles form and why do they burst. Instead, we just carry on doing the same old thing and never look back. We spend more money, we run up more debt, we print more money, and we think that's going to solve the problem that was created by spending too much money, running up debt, printing too much money, and here we are today. We're talking about tinkering on the edges without dealing with the big problem. The Federal Reserve has literally created $8 trillion here in the last several months, at least an obligation, and that's outside the realm of the Congress. We don't even audit the Federal Reserve. They create this money, and when the Fed chairman comes before our committee and we ask, well, where did you dispose of this $2 trillion that you've created recently? He says, well, it's not your business. That's not necessary. And under the law, he doesn't even have to tell us. So this is how out of control this is. Sure, there's a lot of debt in the economy, and once a government or corporations get an excessive amount of